I wasn't actually being extra with that. I actually needed to do that, okay? Because the mic needs to be on screen when I clap. I don't have a desk. I don't need to justify. I don't need to justify myself. Disclaimer, this video is about Didi, the movie from 2024 by A24, directed by Wang. Not Didi, okay? We're not going to talk about Didi in this video from this point on, okay? Alright, anyways, I really love this movie. This movie was really good. I saw it in like a completely empty theater, which was great. No, I do want more people to see this movie, so I guess that's why I'm spreading it a little bit more. Full Asian cast. It was also super relatable and hyper-specific. So I'm a Bayesian myself, a Bay Area Asian, and this movie is all about that group of people in the late 2000s. I really enjoyed it. I love the hyper-specific. So I was like in elementary school at the time, like when this film was taking place, so like late 2000s, 2008, 2009. But I still kind of remember AIM chat. I remember like the end of MySpace and like a little bit of Facebook. I wasn't on social media that much, but like I remember those things. A lot of it was super nostalgic for me, like the early internet. This is also a movie heavily about middle school. It's about the awkwardness, the embarrassment, and a big one is the shame. So Wang thinks that shame is an indelible part of the Asian American experience, and I tend to agree with him. But when I looked back and began mining through the funny memories I had, while also knowing that I wanted to tell a personal story, I was quickly confronted with the notion that if I'm going to write a personal story about an Asian American boyhood that takes place in 2008, which is a different cultural time than today, I'm inevitably going to be writing a story that confronts the way that shame manifests itself within this young boy's life. Whether or not I knew it at the time, that was a defining feeling of me at that age, and it ultimately became the defining theme of our movie, whether it's explicitly talked about or just something I internally felt. So recalling something so personal and committing it to film is an undertaking, but time lets us look at these feelings with objectivity. Middle school emotions are too real and painful at the time of impact to glean understanding. Just avoiding embarrassment is the main goal. Who doesn't look back at their middle school selves and cringe? Wang is able to carve out the important feelings from the time to build a narrative, though. Wang also tries to avoid the script being Asian just for the sake of being Asian. While I do explore themes of belonging or family or identity in a number of my documentary shorts, and while I do it from the lens of a first-gen Asian American perspective, none of them are trying to do that. It all just comes as a result of me being the person that I am, and the films being rather personal films. I feel this super hard. I write scripts myself. None of them are movies except one, and you don't need to watch that. Well, you better wear some protection then, or else you'll become a reproducer.
Very nice.
You know what I mean? I feel like recently I've been writing about more like Asian stuff, and it feels hard not to like force it. It doesn't feel genuine. It feels forced. So I'm Wasian, which means I'm white and Asian, and I'm like a third or fourth generation immigrant. So my experience is super different. So it feels difficult and like I'm forcing, which is why I kind of like Wang. Like he really emphasizes focusing on your own personal life. Like it doesn't necessarily have to be about being Asian, you know? It's a helpful tool to make your stories way more relatable. And also I feel like later generation immigrants don't have as many stories about them per se. We're more used to stuff like Joy Luck Club and like Everything Everywhere. Like those are like seminal movies that talk about like the first generation experience, not necessarily later generations, which is great. People are underrepresented in general. Asian people are underrepresented. Asian people are underrepresented in Hollywood, obviously. So it's great to get those stories. But now I'm like, how do you write a story about someone who's later generation or Wasian or like all these other sort of different experiences?
Oh, Captain Ring.
It's ing.
Oh.
It's like ring, but without the R or the I. It's just ing.
Also, I'm highlighting differences between me and Wang in this movie, but like I felt this movie was like fucking autobiographical at times. Like I had a cringy middle school experience. I also tried to hang out like with the skateboarders. I had like my skating phase with the older skateboarding kids. I've also had many awkward and cringeworthy interaction with girls, which I still kind of do to this day. I also really love the specifics of this movie too. The one that leapt out at me was like the skater scene where Chris Wang, the main character played by Isaac Wang, he's like trying to show them the footage that he captured, and his like mom comes in and stuff and like embarrasses him. Chris Wang yells at his mom like to get out, get out. And then like the main skater kid is like, yo, be nice to your mom, dude. It's like, oh, they nail it. Like the holier than thou skater. The skaters they try to really hard to exist out of being normal jocks, like normal high school jocks. Like they're like way more chill. They're like all this stuff. Cause it still makes them assholes. They're still assholes. Like, don't get me wrong. These guys are dicks, even though they seem like they're like depicted as really cool at the start and like a really meaningful group to be a part of, but they're assholes just like any other group of men. Or group of boys, I should say. It's like they're breaking the stereotype of like, oh, radical dude. Oh, like very conscious of that stereotype. I always felt like skaters were that way. I love these specifics, and it brings me back to the old adage, like, write what you know. And obviously the story is like super personal, but I think write what you know is actually not great advice. According to Brandon Sanderson, one of my favorite fantasy novel writers ever.
Write what you know, I don't want to go too much on this, which was my other half of this, is the same sort of thing. People say, write what you know. What does that even mean? How would you ever write about, how would you ever write fantasy novels? And beyond that, it's good to force yourself to write things you don't know, because that's where you grow and you explore the world. And so I don't even know. Write what you know has like one little good piece of advice to it, which is, hey, do you have a special skill set or passion that is unique to you that you can bring to your work that'll give it this real powerful sense of character? And, it's the old John Grisham thing. Let's write some legal thrillers because I know law really well.
What am I talking about next? Oh yeah, so that general term, like write about what you know, it isn't really that helpful to writers because we, like all the time, writers write about stuff that they don't know about. Like they'll write about fantasy, but I still think the point stands of making a story more personal can be very helpful. And that personableness can be not just like, I'm from the Bay Area, so I'm going to write a story about the Bay Area. It's like experiences that you understand and know and people can like sort of relate to. I think that's sort of the job of a writer, to relay their own personal internal feelings and put it like to a story and have people relate to that. But besides the point, Sean Wang is super personal. Like he makes a bunch of documentaries about his own family and stuff like that. In his other documentary, Wài Pó and Nai, god damn it, terrible Chinese pronunciation, by the way. Or Nai and Wài Pó. Yeah, I think it's that. But in that one, it's all about his own family, about his two grandmothers. And one of his grandmothers is actually in this movie as well. So another scene that stuck out to me is when Chris and Maddie were on the playground. It was hard to figure out the exact message of what was going on. They were being intimate for the first time of their lives. And they were playing like this flirting game where she was like touching up his leg. It was like, are you nervous? Are you nervous? And that was like so middle school. And then she ends up touching him on his private parts. And he like backs away. And it's like, whoa, why the fuck did you do that? And he later blocks her. And I was trying to understand like the way that scene was supposed to be interpreted. Like, was that sexual harassment that she did? Or was Chris just embarrassed? Like, did Chris really have all the power in that situation? And I think that speaks to a very awkward, difficult time in our lives, especially like the first time that we're having these sexual interactions or intimate interactions. And sometimes these experiences can be really damaging and really, at the very least, super embarrassing. And there's like this weird ambiguity that sort of lives there. And that seems super personal as well. And it's like a super like, ugh. Oh yeah, and she also says,
"You're pretty cute for an Asian."
Oh my goodness. You're cute for an Asian is crazy, because that's like such a thing that people say, like people would say in middle school. So yeah, so the trauma is subtle in this movie, but it's clear that childhood experiences have profound impact even if the characters don't show it. Another relatable part of this trauma in this movie was the masking of that these Asian characters do to like hide their trauma or their inadequacy and shame. Isaac Wang nails it in this role. I think he's so good at doing this, putting it on like the sort of cold, almost like tough guy act to hide these feelings of like inadequacy that are like super common in Asian communities and with Asian people. And I loved the scene where he's in the car And finally, everything that's boiling underneath has like sort of explodes in his conversation with his mom, and like the sort of like the facade sort of falls. And that's how it is. Like trauma sort of builds up over time. You don't react immediately to the pain. You don't react immediately to it, but it builds up over time. And like these small things, when Chris was totally embarrassed by his mom after she like sort of embarrasses him in front of the community, he freaks out, runs away. And this also reminds me of another interesting stereotype, that of the cold Asian. Like Asians are cold but competent. Quote, Princeton University psychologist Susan Fisk and her collaborators published a series of articles examining stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination. They show people usually assess a group along two dimensions: warmth, are they sincere and sociable, and competence, are they capable and intelligent. For example, her works find that the elderlies are stereotypically perceived as warm but incompetent, middle class white Americans as warm and competent, Asians and Jews as cold but competent, and homeless people as cold and incompetent. That coldness stereotype is something that I've noticed a lot in my own life. Like, people will, it's weird. It's like people will assume you're super cold if you're not like immediately really friendly with them. When you're an Asian person, I don't know if this resonates with other Asian people. Clearly it kind of does, okay, at least according to that study on racial bias. That were like super cold, calculated people that were not like friendly or warm to talk to. And I think that stereotype can be enforced. Obviously, culturally, it's sort of enforced. Like, that's why I like it in this movie, because it's so clear with Isaac Wang and his performance. He's not exactly vulnerable in middle school. These traumatic experiences and the shame that builds up can lend you to be a little bit more cold or hard to understand. Obviously, a lot of the white kids around him, or non-Asian kids, I should say, like the skaters and stuff, they have difficulty understanding him. And they're like, this kid is whack. Like, what's up with this guy? I think that this is all enforced for like Asian people, and a lot of Asian people are really shy and, you know, a little more quiet. And it's like, that's like the stereotype that's enforced for people.
Have you ever kissed a girl?
No, I never kissed her. What the fuck are you talking about that?
People expect Asians to be, you know, cold, or they're like talking about their own thing, or like they're doing their own thing. And yeah, I think that is really well depicted in this movie, especially how he becomes sort of an outsider, even with his own Asian friend group, as he starts to push them away. So yeah, great movie, exploring our existence as immigrants, lets people see things from our perspective. That's what's so great about these Asian movies, right? Like, I think they're important for American culture to understand like the experience of an immigrant in like such a specific Sean Wang-y kind of way. Like, it's like, it takes us forward and it helps us progress. His personal style of filmmaking, it connects with me, it connects with a ton of other, like a lot of my friends love this movie. We're all Bay Area Asian people, and we all relate to it in a lot of different ways. And so hopefully we can reach across. I could feel it. I could feel my own white side coming over and being like, wait, I'm starting to understand. So hopefully we can get some white people to understand too, and be like, maybe that's why Asian people may act a little colder, or why do I believe in this stereotype? You know, they're just kids trying to live just like me and you in middle school, and then they also have to navigate their own race and their own conception of systemic racism in school. Yeah, I love it. And Sean Wang is super brave for committing it all to screen. Hopefully I was recording this.
Huh?
I am. Great. Yeah, don't listen to Jordan Peterson.
This is the thing that's so wonderful about that. All of this, as far as I'm concerned, is that you're going to encounter how you regulate your sexual morality while you're working with chimpanzees.
See you guys later.